The Senate Judiciary Committee room was supposed to be quiet that morning. The agenda was routine: another oversight discussion, another round of predictable questions for FBI officials, another day of political theater that would fade from headlines within 24 hours. But something entirely different happened. It began with a single, violent sound: bang. Adam Schiff's fist slammed against the mahogany hearing table so hard that the microphones shook. Papers jumped into the air like startled birds. A half-full glass of water tipped over, sending a thin stream across the polished surface. The crowd sitting behind him, mostly activists and supporters, burst into cheers. There was no confusion about what was happening. Schiff wasn't asking questions. He wasn't debating policy. He was attacking someone. "You're nothing but a backwards Louisiana hillbilly in cheap glasses." The words tore through the hearing room with the force of a hammer. Schiff stood tall, red-faced and trembling with rage. His fingers sharpened into a weapon pointed directly at Senator John Kennedy. Schiff was usually controlled, measured, and lawyerly, but not today. Today, he looked like a man who had waited years for this moment. He believed he was about to humiliate Kennedy in front of the country. Kennedy didn't flinch. Across from Schiff, Senator John Kennedy slowly took a handkerchief from his breast pocket. His wire-rimmed glasses had caught some of the spilled water. So he did something strange, almost unsettling: he cleaned them. Calmly, slowly, as if Schiff's insult hadn't even reached his ears. The louder Schiff yelled, the quieter Kennedy became. Schiff continued throwing insults, each more personal than the last. "You're an embarrassment to this Senate. A conspiracy theorist, too stupid to understand national security." His voice shook with anger. The gallery, packed with Schiff supporters, stood on their feet, chanting like a crowd at a sporting event. "Tell him, Adam, tell him." Phone cameras were out. Reporters leaned forward. Some, already anticipating viral headlines, were typing sentences about Kennedy's humiliation before it even happened. At the far end of the front row, a woman named Maria Gonzalez sat clutching a small photograph of her son in his Marine Corps uniform. She had no idea her quiet grief would become part of the story later. She had not come for a spectacle. She had come for answers. And now she was watching two senators scream at each other like enemies on a debate stage. Schiff struck the table again. Another crack of wood. A second round of cheers erupted. Kennedy finished drying his glasses. He folded the handkerchief with the kind of care a man gives to delicate things: family heirlooms, church books, the flag at a funeral. Then he placed his glasses back on, lifted his eyes, and finally spoke. His voice was almost gentle. "Senator Schiff," he said in a calm Louisiana drawl, "are you quite finished?" The gallery went silent. It was the stillness that comes when a predator realizes the prey might not be prey at all. Schiff stiffened. His plan wasn't working. Kennedy wasn't shaking. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't even angry. He was smiling. A small, polite smile that looked out of place in a room filled with rage. Schiff took a step forward, pointing again. "Finished? I haven't even started with you." But Kennedy spoke first. "That's unfortunate, Senator, because I have a question for you." It was polite, almost too polite. The volume in the room dropped. Reporters stopped typing. A shift could be felt, like pressure changing before a storm. Kennedy's right hand slid across the table toward a thick manila folder. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't meant for show. But the bold, black letters stamped on the cover made Schiff's face tighten. Schiff, Russia investigation. The whisper of shock that spread across the room sounded louder than the earlier shouting. Schiff's confident posture froze for half a second. Just half. But cameras caught it. America caught it. Kennedy saw that tiny flicker of fear. And that was when the tone changed. He no longer sounded like a calm man asking a question. He sounded like a prosecutor. "For 3 years," Kennedy began, his voice still soft, "you told the American people that Donald Trump colluded with Russia. Not once, not twice, dozens of times." Schiff opened his mouth. Kennedy didn't let him speak. "You said you had proof. You said you had more than circumstantial evidence." He tapped the folder. "Where is it, Senator?" The room sucked in a breath. Schiff blinked, swallowed, then replied with the phrase he had used for years whenever asked for proof. "It's classified information. I can't reveal it." Kennedy leaned forward. "Can't, or never existed?" It hit like a punch. Even Schiff's supporters couldn't shout. Even the reporters couldn't type. The insult, hillbilly, seemed harmless now. Funny, even. Because Schiff, the man who had spoken with certainty for years, looked suddenly uncertain. Kennedy opened the folder. The pages inside weren't blank. They were covered in red, classified, stamps. Every sheet was real. Every sheet was evidence. Kennedy held up one page after another: court findings, special counsel conclusions, FBI summaries, all showing the same thing. No proof. No verification. No corroboration. No collusion. The Russia investigation Schiff built his career on had collapsed under actual investigation. And now, Kennedy wasn't just questioning Schiff. He was exposing him. Schiff tried to recover. His voice rose again, shaking with anger instead of authority. "This is intimidation. I defended the Constitution. I did my duty." But no one cheered this time. People began reading the documents visible on the screen. Kennedy stood, not to shout, but to present. His tone changed from Southern charm to forensic precision. He read Schiff's old statements aloud, one after another. "We have evidence of collusion. Damning evidence. More than circumstantial." Then Kennedy matched each statement with official government findings. Mueller. No evidence of conspiracy. IG report. No supporting intelligence. Durham. No investigative basis existed. Each contradiction was a knife. Each finding another cut. Schiff's greatest political weapon, his certainty, was turning against him. The gallery, once loud and confident, was now quiet. Some supporters slowly sat down. Others quietly slipped out the back. For the first time, Schiff looked less like a prosecutor and more like a defendant. Kennedy turned toward him again. "Senator, for years, the American people trusted you. They watched you on television. They believed your confidence. They believed you were telling them the truth." He tapped the documents. But there was no truth. Not one word of it. Schiff stared down at the table, breathing hard. Kennedy's voice did not rise. It didn't need to. "Senator, you didn't just mislead the public." He placed both hands on the table and leaned in. "You weaponized the Intelligence Committee. You used classified information to convince Americans of something that wasn't real." No shouting. No insults. Just facts. And facts cut deep. Around the room, people who had arrived to celebrate Schiff now looked uncomfortable. The hillbilly wasn't humiliated. He was dissecting his accuser piece by piece. And Schiff knew it. When Kennedy sat down, he didn't look victorious. He looked tired, like a man who wished he didn't have to do this. But the damage was done. The fight Schiff started wasn't a fight anymore. It was a funeral. And everyone in the room knew what had died. Adam Schiff's credibility. If Schiff's rage in the opening moments was explosive, the silence that followed Kennedy's presentation was something far more dangerous. Silence was the sound of power shifting. Silence was the sound of a narrative collapsing. Senator John Kennedy didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult anyone. He didn't threaten, brag, or posture. He just sat there, calm, steady, unshaken, while Adam Schiff tried to gather himself. The television cameras turned away from Schiff and focused on Kennedy. Journalists stopped typing headlines about "Kennedy humiliated" and began typing new ones, very different ones. Schiff attempted to regain control. "This is outrageous," he sputtered. "All of this is taken out of context. The Russia threat was real. The intelligence was clear." But there was something hollow about his voice now. Like a man trying to put out a wildfire with a glass of water. Kennedy reached for a remote on the table and pressed a button. The committee room lights dimmed, and a large screen came to life behind him. A timeline appeared, bold red text against black. Schiff's public claims of evidence. March 2017 to January 2019. Underneath it was a list of television appearances, interviews, press conferences, dozens of them. Kennedy didn't even have to speak. The room could see the sheer scale of it. But he spoke anyway, in that slow Louisiana drawl that somehow made every sentence sting. 37 times, Senator. 37 times you went on national television and told Americans that you had proof of collusion. He pointed to the screen. And every time, you were asked the same question. What is the evidence? He turned his head slightly toward Schiff. And every time, you refused to show it. The projector flashed a video clip. Schiff appeared on CNN with a confident smile, telling the American public, I have seen more than circumstantial evidence. Then another clip, MSNBC. Then another, CBS. Then another, PBS. A montage, rapid fire, impossible to ignore. Schiff didn't just hint at evidence. He promised it. The whole room watched the man on the screen, a younger, self-assured Schiff speaking with certainty, while the real Schiff sat at the witness table, shrinking into his chair. Kennedy didn't look at him when the clips ended. Instead, he addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, there are two possibilities here. Either Senator Schiff was given top-secret information that not even the Mueller team, the FBI, or the intelligence community ever saw. He paused. Or he was lying. That word, lying, did something physical to the air in the room. People shifted uncomfortably. Senators who had been enjoying Schiff's performance now stared straight ahead, refusing to meet his gaze. Schiff tried to stand again, hands trembling with anger. That is a disgusting accusation. The intelligence community. Kennedy didn't let him finish. Let's ask Special Counsel Mueller. Then, he changed the screen. Now the Mueller report appeared in stark white text. The investigation did not establish that the Trump campaign coordinated or conspired with the Russian government. A second slide appeared, the Inspector General's report. 17 significant errors and omissions. No evidence to support probable cause. A third, John Durham's conclusion. The FBI had no intelligence whatsoever that justified the investigation. 3 separate investigations. 3 separate conclusions. All pointing to one truth. There was never any evidence. But Schiff had said there was. Over and over again. And he hadn't whispered it in private. He had broadcast it to the nation. Kennedy turned back toward the table and closed the folder gently, like someone closing a casket. This was not a misunderstanding. Senator. You saw the same documents everyone else did. And yet you told millions of Americans the opposite. He leaned forward slightly. That is not oversight. That is not patriotism. That is propaganda. The word hit like a hammer. In the gallery, the same activists who had been cheering Schiff minutes earlier were now sitting stiffly, unsure whether to clap, shout, or leave. Even the media reporters seemed frozen, torn between loyalty and truth. Schiff tried one last defense. The Russians did interfere in the election. That part was proven. Yes, Kennedy replied, his voice nearly tender. They bought Facebook ads and ran bot accounts. And that is wrong. But that is not the same as the President of the United States colluding with Vladimir Putin. It was you who made that leap, Senator, not the evidence. He tapped the stack of papers softly. The evidence said nothing. You said everything. That might have been the end of it, an embarrassing moment. A political defeat, a painful lesson. But Kennedy wasn't finished. Suddenly, he raised something no one expected. Schiff's censure. He held up a document from the House of Representatives, the formal resolution condemning Schiff. You were censured by the House for misleading the American people. Schiff tried to look defiant. But his body betrayed him. He flinched when Kennedy said the word censured. Kennedy read directly from the resolution. Misleading the public. Abuse of sensitive information. Conduct unbecoming of a member of Congress. These are not Republican accusations, Kennedy said. These are congressional findings. Then came the final blow. After all the shouting, after all the interviews, after all the confidence, not one piece of evidence you promised ever appeared. He paused, letting the weight of that truth seep into the room. Senator Schiff, the American people trusted you. You had power. You had a platform. And you used both to tell them a story that was not true. He closed the folder. And now we are going to talk about why. Schiff looked up sharply, eyes wide, because he suddenly understood. This wasn't just about lying. Kennedy was about to suggest motive. Hidden motive. Political motive. Dangerous motive. Kennedy opened a new folder, a bright red one, and the committee screens changed again. Bold letters appeared on the screen. FBI investigation into classified leaks. House Intelligence Committee. Adam Schiff. The gallery gasped. Everyone in the room knew what that meant. Leaking classified material wasn't embarrassment. It wasn't political drama. It was a crime. Schiff shook his head violently. No, those allegations were baseless. The DOJ never prosecuted me. It was a smear campaign. Kennedy spoke evenly. You weren't prosecuted because congressional speech and debate immunity prevented it. Not because you were innocent. Then he read from the FBI witness report. Word for word. Schiff authorized systematic leaking. To damage the president politically? The room fell apart. Some Democrats looked horrified. Some Republicans looked stunned. Reporters typed as fast as their fingers could move. And then something happened no one expected. A man in the gallery stood up. He was nervous. His hands shook, but he raised his voice anyway. My name is David Chen, he said. I used to work for Congressman Schiff. I was there. Schiff's head jerked up. Cameras swung toward the man. The room froze. Every senator, every reporter, every camera operator turned toward the young man who had just stood up, a moment nobody expected. Not even Kennedy. It takes something extraordinary for a congressional hearing to stop cold. But a former staffer publicly accusing a sitting senator of wrongdoing? That was beyond extraordinary. The man swallowed hard, gathering courage. My name is David Chen, he repeated. I worked for Congressman Schiff from 2016 to 2018. Schiff went pale. It was the first time he looked genuinely afraid. Security began moving toward the man, but Chairman Graham raised his hand. Let him speak. The gallery fell silent. Chen's voice trembled, but every word was sharp enough to cut through the air. I was there, he said. I worked in the communications office. I helped gather media contacts, draft talking points, and I saw things I shouldn't have seen. Schiff shook his head violently, mouthing the word number. Chen continued. There was a back room in the office, locked, rarely used. Only senior staff had access. But one night I stayed late. Lights were on, door was open, and I saw one of our analysts, the whistleblower who later went to the FBI. He took a shaky breath. He told me he was helping transfer classified documents to friendly reporters. Gasps filled the chamber. Schiff slammed his hand on the table. This is a lie. He was fired. He's inventing this. Chen's voice rose, emotional now. They told him to leak information. They told him the goal was to force charges against the president. Not discover the truth, manufacture it. Reporters jumped from their seats. Phones recording every second. Schiff tried to interrupt again, but for the first time in the hearing. Nobody listened to him. Even his own Democratic colleagues stared at him in disbelief. Chen continued, voice breaking. I was young. I was scared. I needed the job. But when the FBI interviewed me in 2020, I told them everything, and they told me my testimony matched the whistleblower's exactly. Word for word. He tore a folded document from his jacket and held it up. This is my signed statement. The FBI has it. The DOJ has it. I swore under penalty of perjury. He looked directly at Schiff. You ruined people's lives for politics. Schiff's face collapsed into something broken, anger, fear, humiliation all twisting together. His hands trembled. He looked as if the floor might fall out beneath him. Chairman Graham spoke gently, but his voice carried the weight of the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Chen. You may be seated. Kennedy didn't smile. Not now. Not after what he was about to reveal next. He opened another folder, this one labeled Mortgage Fraud, Federal Investigation. The big screens around the room lit up again, showing side-by-side photos. A luxury Maryland home with a pool. A small Burbank condo. Let's talk about money, Kennedy said quietly, because corruption isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's ordinary, quiet. hidden in paperwork. He pointed at the Maryland house. 3,420 square feet. Refinanced multiple times. Each time, Senator Schiff declared this house as his primary residence. Then he pointed at the Burbank condo. But when he bought this property, he also declared it as his primary residence. A murmur went through the audience. Kennedy continued. You can have a home in 2 places. You can have a home in 10 places. But you can only have one primary residence. 1. Because the law gives special tax benefits and special loan terms for primary homes. He held up 2 signed affidavits, one for each property. 2 homes, 2 applications, both sworn as the primary. Both signed by Senator Schiff. He placed them side by side on the table. A visual indictment. That is bank fraud. Federal bank fraud. Schiff's voice was barely audible now. We maintain residences in both states. Congress requires. Everyone in Congress does, Kennedy said calmly. But they don't lie on sworn financial statements to get better mortgage terms. A woman stood in the gallery. Tears streamed down her face. My name is Jennifer Martinez, she said, voice trembling. I applied for a mortgage in 2012. I was denied. Same bank, same year Senator Schiff refinanced. I was a single mother. I told the truth. He lied, and he got approved. She wiped her face with shaking hands. That's corruption, she whispered. Not politics. Corruption. Kennedy let the moment sit. A painful silence that exposed a truth deeper than any headline. This isn't about Trump, he said softly. This isn't about Democrats or Republicans. This is about a man who played by his own rules while ordinary Americans followed the law and suffered for it. He then revealed one more detail, one that pierced the room like a blade. While my mother was losing her house during the foreclosure crisis, Senator Schiff was refinancing his mansion again, and again, and again. His voice cracked, a rare moment of emotion from the usually unflappable senator. She was 67 years old, he said quietly. She worked 3 jobs. She begged the bank for help. They said no. He looked directly at Schiff. But you? You lied. And they rewarded you. No shouting. No insults. Just truth, delivered with the weight of personal pain. Schiff stared down at the table, hands shaking, face drained of color. Kennedy closed the folder. We're not done, he said, voice steadying, not by a long shot. He reached for the thickest folder of all, one marked with the bold letters. Ethics violations. DOJ investigation. National security risk. And every person in the room understood. What came next would be worse. Much worse. The room barely had time to breathe before Kennedy lifted his next folder. A bright red label marked it for what it was. Classified leaks, FBI findings. Schiff raised his head, eyes bloodshot, voice shaking. That folder contains false allegations. Senator. Kennedy didn't even look at him. This isn't rumor, Senator. It comes from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He placed an FBI Form 302 on the table. The cameras zoomed in. Every reporter leaned forward. In 2025, Kennedy began. The FBI declassified a report. In that report, a veteran staff member of the House Intelligence Committee, your own committee, came forward. He tapped the paper. This whistleblower reported that you personally authorized the leaking of classified information to friendly journalists. Not to protect national security. Not to blow the whistle on wrongdoing. But to destroy political enemies. Schiff tried to respond, but the words tangled in his throat. Kennedy continued, reading directly. Information was leaked with the goal of generating indictments against the president. Not revealing truth. Not safeguarding democracy. Generating indictments, engineering them. The room was silent, like it was waiting for lightning. Kennedy added. The FBI interviewed this whistleblower 3 times. They verified his claims with other staffers. They traced patterns of leaks to your office. Schiff slammed both palms on the table. He was a disgruntled employee. No one believed him. Kennedy didn't even raise his voice. The DOJ didn't prosecute you only because of congressional speech and debate immunity. Not because you were innocent. Because the Constitution protected you from prison. Gasps echoed. And then. The moment nobody could have scripted. A young man stood in the gallery. His voice cracked as he spoke. My name is David Chen. I worked for Congressman Schiff. And everything the whistleblower said is true. The room exploded, reporters shouting. Cameras flashing. Senators gasping. Chen's voice shook, but he kept going. I saw classified information passed to the media. I saw staff told to leak it. I was there. He held up a signed affidavit. This is my sworn statement to the FBI. I confirmed everything. Schiff's face collapsed. His mouth opened but no words came out. He wasn't fighting anymore, he was drowning. Kennedy closed the red folder gently. You didn't just lie to the country, Senator. You used the Intelligence Committee as a weapon. He leaned back in his chair. And that is a crime history won't forget. If Schiff hoped it would end there, he was wrong. Kennedy reached for another folder, thicker, heavier, soaked in the weight of real human consequences. On the cover, mortgage fraud, financial deception. The large screens lit up again, showing two homes, side by side. Checkmark a luxurious Maryland mansion. Checkmark a small Burbank condo in California. Kennedy's voice was calm, almost too calm, like a doctor explaining a terminal diagnosis. In 2003, you bought this Maryland home, he said. You signed a sworn affidavit claiming it as your primary residence. He tapped the document with Schiff's signature. Then, in 2009, you bought the California condo. On that loan, you also signed an affidavit claiming it as your primary residence. Even people who didn't understand banking understood this. Two primary residences equals a lie. Kennedy continued. A primary residence gets better interest rates. Better refinancing options. Lower risk to the bank. He looked at Schiff. But only if you tell the truth. Schiff opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Kennedy lifted a stack of refinancing papers. You refinanced your Maryland home 4 times, always claiming it was your primary residence. You claimed the California condo as your primary residence to get tax breaks. Both times, fraud. A woman stood in the front row, tears in her eyes. My name is Jennifer Martinez. She said, I was denied a mortgage in 2012. I told the truth. I played by the rules. And I was denied, while you lied and got approved. Her voice broke. You stole opportunities from people like me. Schiff closed his eyes. Kennedy's voice cracked, not with anger, but with grief. My mother lost her home in the foreclosure crisis. She worked 3 jobs trying to save it. She begged the bank for help. They said no. He stared at Schiff, no shouting, no insults. While she was losing everything. You were lying on loan documents. The room was dead silent. Even Schiff's own allies looked away. Kennedy placed the documents down, one by one, like headstones. Your crime wasn't just political, Senator. It was personal. And it hurt people. Kennedy wasn't done. The next folder was the thickest yet, pages spilling out like a legal avalanche. On its cover, Ethics Investigation, DOJ. The screens lit up again. Censured by the House. Removed from Intelligence Committee. Ethics probe active. DOJ investigation ongoing. One by one, Schiff's career was being dismantled in public view. Kennedy turned toward the gallery. Are there any other Americans who lost something because of what Senator Schiff did? Silence, until an elderly black man rose from his seat. He held a carved wooden cane, hands trembling with age. My name is James Wright, he said. I marched with Dr. Martin Luther King. I was beaten on the bridge in Selma. Dogs tore my arms. I fought so leaders could serve with honor. He turned to Schiff. And you? You used the same FBI that spied on Dr. King to attack your enemies. You disgraced everything we bled for. His cane tapped the floor, one slow, final judgment. Shame on you. Then he walked out, head held high. The room felt smaller after he left, like the air had been pulled out. Kennedy picked up a single photograph. A Marine in uniform. The name beneath it, Lieutenant Marcus Gonzalez. Maria, his mother, sat in the front row, silent tears running down her face. Kennedy spoke softly. October 2018. Marcus and 4 other Marines were killed in an ambush in Afghanistan. He swallowed hard. Investigators found the Taliban knew the unit's exact movements. Information had leaked. Schiff looked up, horrified. "We do not know for certain that your leak caused the breach," Kennedy said. "But the timing, the method, the source." He set the photo gently on the table. His mother wrote 3 letters asking for accountability. "You never responded." Maria sobbed into her hands. The whole gallery felt her pain. Kennedy's voice hardened, not anger, but justice. "My mother lost her home. Maria lost her son. While you built political power, you left a trail of broken Americans behind." Schiff covered his face. He was shaking. Kennedy stood, gathering his papers. "I'm done, Mr. Chairman." He didn't shout. He didn't gloat. He turned and walked toward the door, slow and heavy, like carrying the weight of every victim in the room. Schiff reached out, voice cracking. "Wait, Kennedy. Please, I can explain." Kennedy stopped at the doorway. Without turning, he said quietly, "Explain it to the grand jury, Senator." And then he walked out.